The next item on the agenda is also a matter arising that will be presented by the CAE, and it's relating to the external assurance review of the Internal Audit Department. Could you please proceed?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read. I think we did have a summary in the previous audit committee, and there was a request for the detailed report. We've included it here. I think what the detailed report, Chair, if I can just provide a summary before I get comments from the committee or questions, is that it's coming from a backdrop where we haven't been, we were coming from not performing. So I think we had issues in our department, which is highlighted in this report. And part of it, I think it's the constraints within our capacity to do these particular audits. So there are issues that when we look at, I think from my side as the CAE, that we need to deal with. Some of them are quick fixes that we can do, and then the other ones would need, I think, budgetary monies from which I think the committee would assist with that part. But also, I think it also is an opportunity, Chair, to relook the functioning, to say maybe potentially having core source of our internal, of our IT skills, because in currently how we are, we don't have the skills. And that's an aspect that I think we'll bring on once we've finalized our audit plan for the following year. With the findings that have been raised, Chair, some of them, I think we already have started working on them, but I haven't put a plan as yet on how those ones would actually, how I can make you accountable, how can be accountable to you. So it's an expectation that I'm going to present at the next meeting, but I think for now, I'll take the report as read and your comments and inputs.
Can I afford the opportunity to members to pose questions?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, firstly, I think it's good that we're complying with the standards. We've got our independent review, our internal audit department. However, I mean, it doesn't paint a pretty picture. I mean, on all 11 areas, we are partially conformed, and I think that's unacceptable. I mean, on an area of independence and objectivity related to our internal audit department, surely we should have a generally conformed. It cannot be partially conformed. Something like that is easy to achieve, and I can't understand. I mean, on some of maybe the more technical areas, we could say partially conformed, but I mean, the purpose, authority, and the responsibility of the IA Charter, the independence and objectivity, also proficiency and due professional care, those should be generally conformed. I think those are basics for an internal audit department to have in place, and we cannot have partially confirmed. So my question to the CAE is, why did this happen, and what are we doing to turn this around? Those are things that need to be addressed immediately. My second question, if we look at the report, Chair, is that of the 15 planned audits, only 6 were performed and reported through to us. I think for the Secretariat, we need to ensure that we have a tracking tool around that. But to the CAE, why did we not complete 9 of our audits? That's basically almost looking at about 66% of the plan not achieved. If you want to take this department through to a mature state, we need to have that achieved. So CAE, could you please tell us why did we not complete all our audits? And particularly considering on the audit that we did complete, we had these huge overruns during the year. I don't think that's acceptable. From my side, Chair, for now, that's all.
Right, maybe just take the questions. If you could just take the questions and then respond at the end. Is there any other question?
Not on my side, Chair.
Can I just highlight something there and on the issue of the staff that you employed? Because you said you employed higher people that will not need close supervision. But out of that, we are not seeing the benefit that comes of that in the form of efficiencies. And whilst we use high quality people, we still get deviations of up to 54%. What would have been the cause of that deviation? It's a concern on my part, and I need you to respond to that issue.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start, I think, with a bit of history of the internal audit unit. So I think we do have a bit of historical issues. I think from when we started at that particular time, when we started, the rating that we got was does not conform. So if I look at that particular time, we had issues with capacity constraints. We have had, I think, issues with regards to, I think, where the structure is. The budget always has been an issue to get sufficient budget to actually perform the audits that we needed to do. There is an issue on skills, especially in specialist areas, where I think the expectation from our side is to have specialists, but because of budgetary constraints, you end up having to deal with the budget that you have. So if I can start, I think there has been a bit of improvement. We can still do better, but the issues that I have from my side is just to say the budget constrains what I can do as a CAE. So I have to operate within those particular parameters. The second part, I think, if I go to what was asked by the committee member, where we completed 6 out of the 15 audits, the issue goes back to capacity. So I've had issues with resignations in the department, people are being poached to other units, and that has actually given constraints within what we can do. It takes a bit of lead time between someone resigning and getting a new person to actually bring them back. And because of budgetary constraints, I do not have sufficient money to actually go and get a consultant to assist for me to fulfill that particular issue, to make sure that at least the plan is completed on time. Then the other issue is, I think when the plan was put up, when the department started in having high-level people, it was more to try and guard against the issue of reviews. But what I've seen, I think, actually happening is, even though we've got high-level people, there are issues from cooperation from the different units that the audits are taking place, such that audits take longer than what we anticipated. We are also, I think, getting a bit of issues coming from audits that get delayed. So as a result of the delay or inadequate preparation by the units we're reviewing, we end up with audits that generally don't get done. So it's part of the issues that I have. From, I think, my side as the CAE, it's things that we are trying to work with under the constraints that we've got, but I think it's going to take a bit of time, and also we will need, I think, your buy-in into us changing the structure. So our structure currently is not perfect, and that needs to be looked at.
If I may just put a follow-up question to that, how much of the work that we see here in front of us has actually gone through a quality assurance process? Because if I get it from you that the bulk of the work has been performed by high-level people, to what extent has that been supervised and reviewed? And secondly, to what extent are you able to use that platform as a training ground for people who might perhaps be underdeveloped? Because if you don't employ new staff or junior staff members, you lose out on the opportunity of providing training to a cadre of developing young auditors. Why is that not prioritized?
I think the issue, Chair, the issue of the high-level people, at the time when the unit was set up, it seemed, I think, the best thing to do. But now that we have been operating, I don't think it is the proper way to go. The issue that we have, I think from my side, we expected to say because they are high-level people, their work would need minimal review. But what has come up is that, I think even from the quality assurance, they have highlighted the issue. The reviews sometimes do not take place, either because the work gets done last minute because we just need the report to come through here. So because of the delay, the review sometimes is not done on time or not done sufficiently, and hence the issue that has been raised from the quality assurance review. The issue of junior staff is something that we are now looking forward into, because we can leverage between bringing in someone that we can teach, but at the same time who's much cheaper. So I think it's an option that we are looking at that will assist with empowering them. But the other trick aspect that Chair needs to be considered is the aspect of poaching as well, because we can bring in this person once they are trained. If we don't have an incentive of actually retaining them, we actually can have an issue where we just are a training ground and never retain those people. So it's something that needs to be considered when we bring in the junior people. How are we going to guarantee ourselves that we can keep them for a longer period within the department?
But finally, on my side, there is an issue that you raise around the IT work being conducted by the AG's office, and there being no indication of an intention on your part to develop capacity in-house to be able to respond to that challenge. What can you tell me around that? Because my view is that as the audit committee, we need to have continuous update from your office, the CAE's office, regarding the issues, IT issues that we are exposed to. And it cannot be a once-off thing that is done by the AG at the end. It needs to be continuously done so that we are abreast with developments around the IT situation.
Chair, with regards to the issue of IT, our issue, I think initially when the department was set up, then we didn't have any skills. And currently we've tried to do a bit that we could, but I think the issue of skills is our greatest problem. We do not have sufficient skills to actually perform IT audits that are value-adding. So that's where the stance was, to actually say maybe the AG can do it. That's where I think where our issue is, to say we cannot go into an area where we are not properly qualified. We have looked at this in context of the report that came through from the external quality assurance, And our recommendation, which we're going to bring through once we've done the costing and we've gone and looked in the market, is to probably consider co-sourcing specialist IT services. In this aspect, I think the one issue that needs to be considered is budgetary issues, but it's an aspect that can assist the audit committee through us giving you the assurance on IT. So I think it's an issue that I'll present at the next audit committee to say how do we co-source the specialists and the budgetary implications for that.
All right, thank you. Are there any other concerns or questions from the rest of the members?
Chair, I just want to raise a bit of a comment or question. I recently read a very enlightening book called The ACE Model, and you know, I was interrogating the information. That's what the book talks about, and I think to enhance our oversight responsibility, I'm pulling the information together, and I hear what the CAE is saying. But I mean, we have a 20 million rand saving at this department. We've achieved 84% of our targets. We get a report from the IIA on our QAE review. We haven't achieved all our targets in our IE strategy. And I hear the CAE talking about budgetary constraints. My question is, what budgetary constraints are there? Because we have a 20 million rand saving, we've still achieved our efficiencies, we've achieved basically 80% of our mandate. And I mean, when we look at these IT issues that are coming out, and what the report is talking about, yes, the Auditor General will look at IT, but maybe more focused on a financial reporting perspective. Considering we give out grants, we need to have assurance that our IT is working effectively to deliver those grants through the EFT system. So we've got two senior members here, the CFO and the CIE, and I think I need a report back at the next meeting, because nothing stops them from talking to each other. When I hear the word budgetary constraints and I pull all this information together, I'm like, but how and where? So if there are budgetary constraints that are coming up in an adjustment budget process now, we're submitting an APP going forward, I need this management team to be talking to each other and understanding what their requirements are and how do we successfully achieve our objectives and resource those. So I'm going to urge the Secretary to put an agenda item that we want a feedback from management, and I think we shouldn't wait for the next meeting. We can get feedback via a memo through to us that we can interrogate and ask questions, because we need to submit our budgets quite quickly. But I want feedback on how is this management team working together and addressing critical issues around budget, resourcing, etc., to get this department moving forward.
Thank you very much for that. And that
I think, Chair, just a comment from my side. I think the issue of budget is where you cannot just move budget arbitrarily. And as internal audit, we kind of like feel like everyone just wants to cut internal audit. So it's a part that I think the committee would need to consider when we bring our budgets here, to say when we put that budget across, I think if we do have the buy-in of the audit committee, that would assist, but we generally feel as internal audit, everyone just wants to cut a pie of the internal audit budget, and hence it impacts on our delivery of the work that's being done.
Can I request that exactly for the same reason that was suggested by the audit committee member, you go and resolve that outside the audit committee, and you as management team come up with one solid front to this committee, and we consider that which you present, but you present it as part of the team as opposed to one fighting the other. We really wouldn't like to see that exchange in the audit committee. Then that takes us to the next item. It takes us to the next item, which is the presentation of the reports. And on that note, we'll start with the report of the CFO. And please, over to you, CFO.
Thank you, Chairperson. Members of the Audit Committee, it is my pleasure to present the unqualified annual financial statements for Prime Service Government Department. I'm particularly pleased because we've come a long way from the last 3 years where we had a disclaimer, and then last year it was a qualification, and this year we've got an unqualified set. This actually shows that our strategy to attract and retain talent is beginning to bear fruit. Now, as I'm saying this, I'm also mindful of the fact that the Auditor General has indicated that there were material misstatements that were identified, which were subsequently corrected. And if I can just highlight to the committee members what they were, they really related to classification errors, instead of capitalizing finance leases, we found that, quite a few of them were expensed. You'll remember that as we pay grants, we've got quite a few offices all over, and we've entered into long-term leases. And some of them actually related to the cut-off, having to recognize some of the liabilities that we've got to pay. And now you remember the other side of the asset is a liability. So, certain liabilities were not recognized. But with the help of the Auditor General, and also remember 6 months ago, I think in the previous Audit Committee meeting, I had indicated that we got a very competent senior finance manager who actually had done articles from one of the big 7 firms, and she had done articles from one of the big 7 firms, and she was actually very much instrumental in training government departments on fiscal discipline. And I mean, she's from a firm that has come with an ACE model when it comes to audit committees, and you can see already now her involvement has begun to bear fruit, because although there were adjustments, we still have an unqualified opinion. Now, I'm going to take that these financial statements have been read, and therefore I'm just going to perform an overall analytical review, just highlight a few things that I believe the audit committee members would be keen to know. The committee member there did indicate that we do have a surplus, and yes, Chairperson, we are going to make sure that we talk as management and not come and begin to discuss our issues, why this department didn't get, why this unit didn't get allocation in terms of the budget. I'm highlighting that we are surrendering to the revenue fund 19.4 million, that we couldn't spend. And also we've got a surplus of 21.6 million. Now, and I'm sure you would like to know what impact does this have on our service delivery, So now remember, 2 years ago, I came to this committee and I presented the budget and also our strategy relating to how, we are going to move away from a paper-based approach of, administering, of paying these grants, and we are moving now more to, to an automated platform. We are very sensitive about paying grants because we do acknowledge that we are dealing with very vulnerable members of our community. We're dealing with, orphans, we're dealing with the elderly, and therefore we don't want to pay late, we don't want to pay incorrect amounts, and therefore we decided to transform our organization in order to elevate our operational effectiveness and efficiencies. Now, that means, therefore, that we needed to have somebody who's going to drive this project. And internally, we didn't have the person. We had to advertise. And 3 months ago, we managed to get a person who's going to be driving this. So some of the projects that were planned to take place this year ended up not taking place. So, but now, going forward, given that we've got a resource, they are going to take place in the next, in the next financial year. And we are excited about this program because we believe that it will transform us, at PSGD, which is Prime Service Government Department, into a service-orientated entity in line with the expectations of our internal and external stakeholders. Now, so that takes care of why we have to surrender 19.4 million. I'd like to highlight that we have budgeted, we have adjusted our estimates of national expenditure accordingly, and therefore our MTF, we've consulted, everybody in the organization, it should know, it is still correct, it is still reasonable stated as we've submitted it. The second aspect that I would just like to quickly take the committee through is to do with the receivables of 3.6 million, the increase in our accounts receivable. I know that maybe you'd like to know, why are we having, why is there this increase? What does it mean? I'd just like to highlight that overall, this is 2% of the total receivables. And it's because of the 2 offices that we had opened in Limpopo, Now, I've heard that in Limpopo, you know, those offices are going to be under administration by National Treasury. So they could maybe, you know, like it could be a problem, you know, like we may have to impair this amount. But I'd like to, you know, like to affirm to the committee that there is no going concern that is going to be impacted here because we've got a very healthy liquidity ratio. Our current ratio is 1:1, and which approximates our acid test ratio because we don't have stock. So we know that in the next 12 months we will continue as a going concern. I think maybe the other thing that I'd like to touch on is our commitment to a clean administration. We take governance very seriously. In fact, you know, like we work very well with the Auditor General, and we are very much, you know, like dedicated to, you know, like to clean governance and compliance with the PFM Act and Treasury regulations. Now, when you look at the financial statements, you'll find that there is a decrease on irregular expenditure. Whilst last year it was 518,000, this year it's only 2,000 rand. And I mean, like, this shows our dedication and commitment to clean governance. You'll see that also, you know, like what had been the irregular expenditure that was incurred last year was ultimately condoned by National Treasury. And you know, like we followed through the PFM Act and Treasury regulations in terms of disciplining the people who were involved. And just briefly, this related to, you know, like supply chain issues where instead of getting 3 quotations, only 1 quotation, you know, like was used in order to source services. And when it comes to fruitless and wasteful expenditure, I would like to put it across to this committee that although last year it was 169,000, this year we have not incurred any fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And therefore, I'm giving, you know, like assurance to this committee that we take our clean administration responsibility very, very seriously. I think, yes, I'm gonna now pause and allow the members to, you know, like to pose through questions. Thank you, Chairperson.